So let me introduce very quickly Jared and Deanne, right? They co-own Kombucha on Tap, and they've been distributing kombucha and other items on tap since 2014. Jared is the CEO and a certified draft systems technician. And Deanne is VP of Media Marketing and a specialist in market trends. They're going to share some of the biggest hurdles when seeking to put your kombucha on tap, why customers and distributors choose to put items on tap, and the decisions that need to be made before distributing. Keep in mind, in the little cool networking space that's outside of here and to the back, we do have some providers of some of these really awesome pieces of equipment to help get your kombucha to more people in more of a bulk kind of format. So please give a round of applause for Kombucha on Tap.
Welcome, everyone, and we'll be doing Keg 101. Now, 101 means the basics, and we're going to go over the basics and more, but we thought we'd start out by telling you what 101 really means to us.
All right, so number one, the number of times that a keg has exploded on a client. Luckily, no one was hurt. It was left unrefrigerated, and the client is still a great client of ours. But we'll let you know a little bit coming up which brand that was,
exactly.
Or style keg that was.
And then zero is the number of times Jared or I ever tapped a keg in our lives before starting Kombucha on Tap. 0.
And 1, the number of kegs that might have ended up on the side of the road this year. One of our drivers said that a keg might have fallen out and fallen on the side of the road. We never found it. But if somebody's going to find a kombucha keg on the side of the road, they're going to be very surprised of why it's there.
Very confused. So we want to start also with a disclaimer. We're going to go through the pros and cons of all these different styles of kegs. And just want to let you know this is 100% our opinions and also based on our experiences and then feedback we've received from our different clients. So totally based on our experiences, we'll go through the pros and cons. And then Lee with Whalebird Kombucha will come up here and talk about how to fill and clean different styles of kegs.
All right, so the first one we're going to go over is a ball lock corny keg. As you see, the cost $95 new, approximately $50 plus used. One thing you have to consider if you're going to buy used ones, you'll probably have to replace all the gaskets that go in there, all the O-rings and whatnot, and clean them up. Otherwise, they're great for being able to easily fill kegs. So for people that are starting up, or if you just want to have it on tap at your house, it's a great, easy way to start.
It is, and you can fit usually up to 3 of them in a small style kegerator.
Yeah, one of the non-NSF units.
The cons are that there's lots of points for air and product to leak out.
So for a lot of it, you have 3 points, 3 different gasket points on these kegs. That gives you 3 different leak points, 3 different opportunities for potential clients to goof things up.
Yep. A lot of bars are set up for the Sankey style, so it's not as plug and play. And you have to retrieve them after you use them and clean them. So that's another con.
Yeah, and then a client, because there's 2 different posts on here, a client is bound to mix up where the in, where the out is, no matter how detailed you label them.
Yeah, and get it stuck. And then also it's, with the in and out posts, they can clog easily. So SCOBY residue can end up in there and also particles.
Yeah, and then as far as, it's not as good for market expansion, just because industry standard is Sankey. So when you start going beyond your field of reach and wanting to expand into distribution, it's going to be a lot harder for distributors to want to use this style keg just because everything else is the industry standard of American Sankey, at least in the United States. So you want to make sure that you consider that when you look into distribution. First off, distributors are not going to want to troubleshoot this style of keg as readily as they would a Sankey keg, just because it's not their wheelhouse, not their knowledge base, and they're going to have to, every time they set up a new client, they're going to have to changing out the Sankey to the ball lock connectors. So try to make it as easy on yourselves and on your distribution partners by going with an industry standard keg.
So overall, not our favorite, but it is good for starting. Okay, the next one is the stainless steel Sankey keg, which is down at the end.
So that's the standard in the industry. Beer companies have been using them for a very long time, tried and true, very low problems. One of the things we did not mention on the ball lock kegs is There's a lot of opportunity for tampering. 99% of the time you would never have a problem with that, but because they're so easy to open and fill, you can have, if somebody wanted to, they could tamper with it, and then your product is compromised. Where a Sankey keg, you have to have a special connector to be able to do that. Putting product into that or opening it is far more difficult.
You're also not going to have the air leaks or product leaks. And if you drop it, it's not going to crack. If it falls, it won't crack either.
You know, but you're going to have then, on the con side of it, you know, it's much heavier, so you have to make sure that you're taking your employees' time, the wear and tear on your employees into consideration on the stainless steel side of things. And then also keg management is another big part of it. As things start going out beyond your field of your personal distribution, you have to wonder, okay, how am I going to get these kegs back to me to be able to clean them and refill them?
Absolutely, and we wrote in the notes there, we don't have any experience with it, but there is a company called MicroStar that manages stainless steel kegs. So you do need to retrieve them, like you said. They're heavy for shipping and lifting, and you can only fit 2 of them in a smaller home-style kegerator, which you're not going to be using those in your commercial places, but let's say you have a business that has it in their tap room or in their break room, you can only fit 2 kegs into that size. So overall, we think they're okay. But as a distributor, we really like the one-way style because it's easiest for us and our clients. And then we have a pub keg.
All right, so our first style of one-way keg is by Rarick Pacific. It's a pub keg. That's their brand for it. So it's a outer shell bucket, removable lid, and an inner bladder, amber bladder. So it's all plastic. It's all PET, you know, BPA-free, and according to the manufacturers, there's no leaching that happens during those.
So the pro is that you never need to clean a keg again, and it's lightweight for shipping. The con is the size of it. Like the top is too big. So what happens is you can't fit as many in a kegerator. So we had to get creative and do these cut buckets.
Yeah, so it's sized as a 7.5-gallon keg is what the outer bucket shell size is. So even on commercial units, where you could fit 3 6-barrels into them or 4 6-barrels, you're only able to fit 2 of these inside of that. So one of the solutions we did come up with is, well, okay, so the bucket is tapered. So you cut off where the tapering is. You get a cut pub keg. Take the bladder out of the big shell. Put it inside this one. You can fit 4 inside of a commercial kegerator. Or, you know, you can do 2. The bottom of this is round. It will not sit on its own. So that's something to consider as well. So challenges when you're trying to fit a lot of kegs into a kegerator. If you don't want to use the cut bucket or you don't have a way to cut those, these do not stand up on their own. Sure, you put enough in there, close the door real fast. It'll stay, hopefully. But exactly.
Yeah,
and then as soon as the client opens that door, everything falls out.
Yeah,
So just gives you the good experience on different styles there.
And that lid can actually be really hard to get off, too, for a lot of us. So it was a cool program. They used to come and they would pick up these outer blue shells and reuse them, and then they ended that program. And that photo you see is one of our drivers at like the end of his shift. They would literally like pyramid up the bladders and then stack these outer shells, and then they would smash the bladders.
Yeah, so you can stick a coupler on here to depressurize it. Stick an old coupler on there, put it on there, depressurize it, then step on it, crush it, and throw it in the trash, the recycling bin.
And we had to do that because we'd have like thousands of these pub kegs everywhere. And it would take them a while to come and pick up the outer blue shells. So we had to do that for space. Overall, we don't really recommend it. Everyone kind of moved away from this style. And there's just much better one-ways on the market.
And are those Sankey connections on
There are, yeah,
Yes.
they're Sankey.
Yeah, they're American D style. Depending on where you are, so for international, they do make it for different coupler styles for international as well.
Okay, the next is Dolian. The cost of these is about $16 if you're on the East Coast to $18 on the West Coast. It's shipping from Belgium and could be more or less with volume. The pros, you want to take it from there?
Sure. So the pros, it's lightweight for shipping. They weigh significantly less than a stainless steel keg, approximately 4 pounds less, which is good for wear and tear on your employees and your clients, and then also for shipping. So the freight cost is lower because of the lighter weight.
Absolutely. It's 100% one way. So once a client is done with it, they throw it in their recycling bin. So we never have to pick them up again, which is awesome. And then we don't need keg deposits or returns on them.
It's a number 1 and number 2. They are labeled as number 1 and number 2 recyclable plastic.
They also have a pressure release valve, so they will not explode if overpressurized. And that reminds me, the one that exploded on someone was a pub keg. Just so you guys know.
Yep.
Sorry, pub kegs.
Yeah, so the pressure release valve is right up here. It's a little red part. After this, everyone can come up and have a hands-on touch and feel.
Well, they're also out. They do have a booth.
Yeah, they have a booth.
And
so it's at 3 bars, above 3 bars.
Does it stay as cold in that?
Does it stay as cold? So no, as far as if you have it sitting out, the stainless steel is going to retain a little bit more of the cold, but I think if you're going to have it out for any extended period of time anyways, you're going to want to put it on ice, period, whether it's a stainless steel or a plastic.
And then with the cons, we found that occasionally a coupler will not fit on it.
And one of the things is because of the height of the chime. So this is the top handle is called the chime. And the way that it's set up, if you have a longer handle coupler on some of them, or the coupler handle, it's going to hit this chime. So, you just have to be aware of that in the field. 95% of the time you won't have a problem, but, there's always that 4% of people that have different styles that go with that.
Exactly. Construction right there. We have had issues with the draw tubes on them. Those top handles have actually fallen off on a whole batch of them, so they're not perfect yet. But they're based in Belgium, and they are going to be opening a U.S. branch soon, we're told.
Yeah.
And so far, it's been our favorite to use. And we don't get any sort of commission for saying this.
All right. So the next is Patainer.
All right, so Patainers are $15.50 to $17.50 based on volume purchases over a 12-month forecast.
And so the pros, it's very lightweight for shipping. They're 100% one-way. It's a 2-part. This is called an octobin. So this is the outer protective shell that protects the inner bladder. The chime on here, is easy on there, and it fits with little handles on the chime for carrying them. It's 100% recycled, and the client can recycle them when they're done. So, as far as your use or for distribution use, they don't have to be worried about being picked up.
Exactly, and it's a US-based manufacturer. The cons is that you can't slide them. So like in your warehouse, if your team is kind of sliding kegs to get them all staged, they don't slide well, they're not easy to maneuver, and they can tip over.
Yeah, one of the things we found here, clients had this as well, is that the way that the structure on the bottom of the octobin is set up, it just allows a little tipping. So it just has to be handled more gently for transportation purposes.
The other thing you'll notice on it is that there's these handles, and when this is actually full and 50 pounds, this hurts a lot on your hands when you're lifting it, and it hurts our driver's hands, and they definitely tell us about that. So we're told that a new redesign is coming out, but it's about 6 to 9 months away. So something to think about.
Yeah, the outer bin, just because this is plastic, it's corrugated plastic, so they can rip off, and the outer chime here just has a little sharpness to it. If clients are a little too aggressive using couplers, the couplers can get stuck on here, and because the outer chime is not firmly secure to the bin, it'll sit there and spin. So you'll just have to grab the top here with a hand or a wrench to be able to get the coupler off. But the new style that they're coming out with said it has a lock on the chime, so you won't have that same problem. The new model is about 6 to 9 months, I think, before it hits the market.
They're harder to stack, too. And also, it only works with the Micromatic D couplers. So you can't use chrome couplers, and you can't use the Taprite brand, is what we found.
And I have some examples here of those style couplers that you can look at to see which ones we're talking about.
Yeah, so we're looking forward to the new changes, but right now, due to the outer shell issue, it's still not our favorite. Okay, and now we're going to bring Lee up with Whalebird, and he's going to talk about how to fill and clean kegs.
They kind of covered this already. Oh, thank you. These we made our presentations independently, so there's a little bit of overlap. So you'll get to hear it twice, get it fresh in your brain. Left side there is kind of the homebrew style. You can open up from the top. They have a different type of connection. The right side there is the Senki kegs. Yeah, those are the industry standard. You can see they come in a lot of different sizes. In the kombucha world, because we have so many different flavors and stuff, the larger ones aren't really used very much because it's not really, they want to save the space for different flavors for the kegerators. Let's move on because we kind of covered that already. But these are your different style connections. I was going to say that we didn't really need to worry about these except for the D style, but I realize there are some international people here that will need to consider this. The D style there, just second to your left, is the kind that we're going to be using in the US. So that's your connection type. And then Jared and Deanne just covered, there are the plastic kegs. That's not really relevant to this presentation because I'm going to be talking about mostly washing them, and this is a one-way one. So I'll be talking about filling them as well. So these are the Senki type connections. You'll fill them the same way you'd fill a stainless steel Senki keg. The general cleaning breakdown for these kegs are, you're just going to want to wash out most of the main particles. You can use detergents to do this. For this corny kegs, you can get your hand in there and you can scrub it. Just get the main particles out of there. There's a detergent called TSP that we use, or trisodium phosphate, that will break them down, help out with that. You want to sanitize the kegs. Make sure you allow for the appropriate contact time. Read the instructions, the dilution ratios, and allow for the appropriate sanitation time. There's two types that we use. There's one called Star San. I'm going to get this thing's a little funky. There's one called Star San. That's kind of an industry standard. There's also citric acid that you can use. That's one we use as well. It's pretty good stuff. Then you're just going to rinse your kegs and pressurize kegs with CO2. You want to pressurize your kegs with CO2 when you're done. This will help keep them kind of strong when you're moving them around. If there's pressure inside of them, they won't dent as easily. With the corny kegs especially, they will also help to seal it up so you don't have contamination issues if they're sitting on your shelf for a while. Additionally, when you go to fill your kegs, they're then full of CO2, so you limit your amount of air exposure when you're filling them up. A little more detailed corny cleaning instructions. First, you're going to want to depressurize the keg so you can get that top off. There's a little valve on top. You can see that you just pop and twist. It'll take the pressure out. Take off those liquid posts and the gas post there. You can just use a deep well socket wrench to take off both sides. This is a little diagram of what they look like. There's a lot of parts in there, as you can see. And if you ever let your kegs get warm, or if any kind of SCOBY forms in there, you're going to probably get them clogged in here. So you really need to take them off every time, break them apart, and soak them in sanitizer of your choice. Additionally, you want to remove the lid and soak that in the same sanitizer solution. Basically, with these ones, it's pretty easy to get in there. You just rinse it with some hot water. That will break up most of the particles. We didn't really ever use detergents with this because you don't need it. Just give it a spray, shake it around, and then you use your Star San. Give it a spray in there. Scrub the walls with some steel wool or Scotch-Brite. Stainless steel, so everything's fine. You can use a scrub brush as well. And apply that sanitizing solution. Sometimes you want to put the lid back on right now, fill it up with some sanitizing solution, and I like to put the lid on and just shake it around. You can also leave the lid off and just roll it, but make sure you get it on all the surfaces and allow the contact time. It's maybe like 5 minutes or something, depending on your dilution ratio. Then you're just going to want to rinse them all with water and reassemble the keg and pressurize the kegs. Once again, roughly 10 psi. You can go less than that. That 5 psi is usually enough to really seal up the corny kegs. And I also wanted to mention that be careful when you're pressurizing these things. These have a blow-off valve, so they're pretty safe, but they're only rated to about 45 psi. And if they do, if something goes wrong with that valve, they can explode. I mean, I don't think it happens very much, but with all kegs, especially the plastic types, just be really careful because people have died in the industry when they blow up plastic kegs or something if they're not paying attention. And some people are new here. If you're just not aware of that, it can be a dangerous thing. So. Oh, I wanted to mention this too. I've never used one of these, but when I was making this presentation, I stumbled across this. It looks like somebody does make a little keg washer that looks pretty cheap. You might want to get one of these and play with it if you're using corny kegs. Can't really give you much advice on it though. Senki kegs. First step here, you're probably going to want to get a machine to do it for you. They're not very fun. I just Googled the first 3 images when you Google opening a Senki keg online. I don't know if this looks like much fun to you guys, but it's a pain. We've tried to do it. It's just like that. You do it like that. There's no real good way to do it. That being said, I do know people who do open these up and clean them every time. I would just suggest that if you're going to make the transition to Sankey's, it should come along right along the right time with when you can afford to buy a keg washer, because you're going to lose efficiency if you're trying to wash these by hand. You're going to find it takes way longer than washing your corny kegs. So it just doesn't really make sense to do it until you're going to buy a keg washer. You have a bunch of options out there when you do get to buying a keg washer. On your left side there, you kind of have a manual machine. It'll do the same thing as these automatic machines on the right. The problem is you just need to stand there and turn the valves the whole time. So you're kind of standing there, running a cycle for 30 seconds, closing a valve, opening another one, and it requires you to be there the whole time. If you can invest, spend a little more, and get one of these automatic kegs, you hook up two, you hit go, and you walk away for 2 minutes, and you come back. So it's actually a really good thing to stage if you're filling kegs. You can go fill a keg. It takes about the same amount of time. Come back, take your kegs off, and it's a pretty efficient way to do that. If you look at there on the right, that's actually the style of machine that we have. It's super convenient because you can just invert the kegs, and that ram that comes down will apply pressure and create the seal for you, so you're not dealing with the Sankey connections all the time. It just gets to be old, I think, but I will warn you that that's a little bit messier when it makes that contact and it seals up. A lot of times the pressure inside the kegs will spray some of the kombucha out on the table and get on the floor. So there's a little more cleanup afterward using these machines, but I would really recommend them. I really like the one that we have. Saves a lot of time. So I also want to mention that these are all pretty similar. They'll do a detergent wash or a caustic acid wash, and then they'll purge it with air. Then they'll do a sanitizer wash, and a lot of times it's a hot wash, so it'll break up those debris. And then they'll automatically purge it with air and fill it with CO2. So it does all that for you. Your kegs are ready to go on the shelf, and yeah, you're pretty much ready to go. Some considerations when you're picking out these machines. Basically, you want to look at how many water baths or reservoirs they have on board, and if they have a heater. Some of them only have a sanitizing wash, and they just run a sanitizing bath. Other ones have two, so you can do a detergent and a sanitizer. And you definitely want to look at that heater, too, because the heater helps when breaking up the chunks, especially with scobies. A lot of these machines were designed for the beer industry, so they are a little different than when you're working with kombucha. We've noticed that if we have a half-left keg that was sitting outside for a week or so and gets warm, there will be a little SCOBY that forms, even though there's not much air in there. And you want to make sure that it's going to go through these machines, which brings me to my next point. This is probably the most important thing when you're looking at these to consider. Some of the ones that are made for beer use a cheaper style of valve. It's called a solenoid valve there on the right. You want to look for these ones that have these piston valves on the left. If you actually go out in the main room, there's a machine there for keg filling that has them on there. You can get an idea. But it's basically like a ball valve, but it's actuated. It'll open up the entire pipe, whereas that solenoid valve has a very small opening. I think it probably works fine for beer and stuff. Small particulates can get through it, but if you have a SCOBY going through your lines, it's going to get caught in there. I don't have the experience, but I imagine. I've seen those valves, and they're very small orifices. So, another thing to consider, footprint. Some of these keg washers are tiny. This is a triple keg washer. As you can see, it takes up barely any space. It's on wheels. You can move it around. Looks like it's a fully automatic machine. I can't really tell if that has two reservoirs or one on board, but it's a really good model, it looks like, actually, if you're kind of limited in space in your warehouse or brewery. And then, of course, your power requirements. I kind of had some prices listed there before, but keep in mind that these usually have 240-volt connections, so you want to make sure that you have that at your facility. And you're going to probably have to pay an electrician, unless you're handy, and a plumber to come in. So you're looking at $2,000 to $3,000 for the setup as well. Let me get to that. Okay, when you get to filling your corny kegs, there's kind of two methods of doing this. This is basically the most common method because, well, that's the reason you have corny kegs, so you can open up the top and fill them the simplest way. We originally used one of these pumps that's called a siphon pump right there on the left, and you just basically get it pumping, and it creates its own auto siphon. And you can fill them. You want to drop the hose to the bottom so that you are, again, limiting your air exposure. In any case, filling all kegs, you want to limit the amount of air exposure you have with your kombucha when you're done brewing. It's a little unknown because kombucha is open air fermentation. We don't really know how important that is, but we definitely try to limit it as much as possible. So if you're going to be using these style kegs, I want to go over a couple of the pros and cons. Obviously, this is the cheapest way to do it. That pump on the left costs $15 and you can fill up your kegs. If you want to spend a little more and it's in your budget, some of those pumps on the right, flexible impeller pumps, they will speed it up very significantly. The one that is cart mounted would usually have a variable frequency drive on there. So that basically allows you to control the speed at which you're pumping. Gives you a lot more control. It's great. Another pro of this one is you have a viewable headspace. So a lot of people using corny kegs will be probably force carbonating in their corny kegs still. It's kind of important that you leave the same amount of air gap at the top so that when you go to force pressure or force carbonate it, it has the same surface area. That's especially important if you're turning them on their sides when you're force carbonating. So that's the nice thing about being able to see in there. You can just fill it up to the same spot every time. Some of the cons here are you have a lot of exposure to air regardless because you have the top wide open, obviously. You can only fill one keg at a time, really. It's pretty slow. There's a contamination risk, which we haven't really seen was too much of an issue for us, but you do have it wide open, so things can get in there that you don't want. It's difficult to fill these kegs completely because you don't have the lid on them, and it's messy. Every time you pull one of these hoses out of there, you're gonna spill, you're gonna drip. I mean, it's not the end of the world, but it is a little bit messier. So another way to do this would be similar to how we're going to fill the Sankey kegs, but basically you just connect one of your fluid lines. You're pushing in through your fluid line, and you out the gas line, you just allow the fluid to go into a drain bin there or a catch bin. So pro of this, it's limited air exposure. You're increasing your sanitary control by not having that top open. You can fill the kegs completely. That's important. Filling the kegs all the way to the top is really nice if you're going to be transporting a lot, because if there's some headspace in there and they slosh around, it gets agitated, and then you bring it to a customer and they hook it up, and it's all foamy for the first 30 minutes to an hour, so maybe longer actually. So if you have them full, it really helps reduce that agitation. Also, you won't make the spills except for into that spill bucket, which is the idea. A con of this is you can't see how full the keg is. If you're going to be doing that forced carbonating again, you want to know that so you can keep that headspace consistent. You're going to potentially waste kombucha here because you can't see how full it is, so you walk away, try to do other things, and oftentimes you'll come back and there'll be a gallon of kombucha that spilled over, so you kind of got to be on it. Filling the Sankey kegs. Basically, you're going to connect a Sankey coupler just like you would a regular one when you're dispensing it, but you're going to fill it in the reverse direction. So that diagram kind of explains it there. You're pushing the fluid in through the top. There's different ways you can do this, and I should have mentioned this in the last slide. When you're filling them, you can use a pump to fill, and I kind of showed you this. But if you're going to be going to Sankey kegs, it's often when you're going to be transitioning to using a bright tank too, and that's a larger vessel where you do all your forced carbonation on a larger batch. And then we actually just use the pressure inside the bright tank to push it into these kegs. It's really nice because you're not worrying about turning a pump off and on, trying to time that with filling kegs, and you're always maintaining consistent pressure in the kegs when you're storing them for a while, so they come out at serving pressure, roughly 10 psi, and they're not later getting overcarbonated in the kegs or anything. So a really nice way to do that if you do have a bright tank. I just covered that. I put this diagram in here. If you're going to be filling using these Sankey type connectors, these couplers, you need to remove two of the valves. There's a check valve for the gas line coming in, and there's also that little floating ball up there. You can see those need to come out so that you can run the fluid in the opposite direction and allow the gas to escape, or it won't work. So make sure you do that. And of course, just run that overflow line into a catch bucket like the other ones. I wanted to talk about this real quick. There's some cool products out there. I think Micromatic makes this keg filler. It's about $300 on the left there. We bought one of these and played around with it and didn't have a lot of success. It has a float valve on the outside there, so you basically don't have to watch it. You can walk away and you come back, and that float valve will seal itself up once the keg is full. But what we found is it has a really hard time differentiating between foam and kombucha. So sometimes you come back, the keg's half full. You got to take that thing apart, clean it out, get the foam out of there. We quickly just went and made our own out of your standard Sankey decoupler, and you can buy these little valves here that are 20 bucks a piece. Change out the barb fittings there to be the larger, like a 5/8 diameter barb fitting, so it increases your flow rate and you can fill your kegs faster. But that's about a $60 setup versus a $300 setup, and it works a lot better in my opinion. One thing I'll mention actually too is we originally bought the valves. They didn't have a stop in the middle. They could swing all the way through and you could open them both directions. That was a big issue because if you didn't have it just right and you disconnected it, you spill and make a mess. So those are the kind of valves you want to put on there. Oh, and I just added a bonus slide of some of the cool things we found when we made our transition. So These are really sweet things. These are they're posts that go on your Sankey couplers. So if you're switching from corny to Sankeys, you can basically create this in-between coupler. So if you go to a client with your new Sankey keg, they're set up for corny kegs still. You can swap them out quick without having to worry about it. This is another, basically the reverse of that. It looks a little more complicated, but you can do the same thing in reverse if you need to with corny kegs to Sankeys. That's a Sankey D connection on top of a corny keg. And then these have been super helpful too. The low-profile Sankey connectors. We found that a few places we've gone, our customers have had fridges that they converted to be tap towers. They weren't really designed for that, so it's hard to fit the actual Sankey kegs in there with the couplers on top. You have this option of a low profiler. We've got a couple of customers that we've been able to seal the deal with them because we could fit our kegs in. So, yeah, that's pretty much all I've got for you guys. I will wait for questions at the end here.
So just going back, thank you, Lee, for that. Some other parts that are needed for successful draft systems. Jared's pretty much a draft system expert, so tell us a little bit about the components.
So one of the things you want to consider on the component side of it is always stainless steel contacts. Anything that's going to touch your beverage, as far as the metal hardware, you want it to be stainless steel. And then on the tubing side of things, vinyl tubing seems to work just fine. You will get some leaching depending on if it's a non-barrier vinyl tubing. So if you have some strong ingredients, you might see some of that penetration in the line. So if you switch between flavors for a period of time, you might have a little bit of a flavor or a smell that still transfers from one flavor of kombucha to the next. There are barrier tubings available from the different manufacturers. I saw that UBC's kegerator out there with the coffee, they have it plumbed with barrier tubing, which means that once you run cleaner through it, it does not leach into the line, so you'll have a clean tube every single time. So that's one thing you want to consider. Stainless steel, don't use chrome-plated brass. If draft is very new to you, or if you've had draft for a while and you've seen what kombucha does, and this happens in the beer side of things too, the chrome plating comes right off that brass part. So it means that somebody's consuming that. Yes, it's in small doses. Yes, it's not harmful, but you're still consuming that. And the other thing is once that brass is exposed, especially on kombucha, because of its acidity, that brass starts to deteriorate. So every component just starts getting weakened. And you don't have as many scobies formed on it. So it actually runs cleaner when you're using stainless steel.
And then one thing we learned of coupling kegs is a trick to use one hand. And we learned this from Stumptown Coffee Roasters. So Jared's going to demonstrate how to do that real quick.
All right. So this will be an easy one just because you can see the valve. So teach people to couple with one hand. Tell them put one hand on the keg itself, one hand on the coupler, lines up with the tabs on there, turn, and then engage. I'm not going to engage it because this had kombucha in it, so it's still pressurized. Ultimately, what that allows you to do is people will not over-crank the coupler on the keg. That's a big problem when you go out in the field and you're having to get a wrench to try to take this off because somebody decided they want to put it on too hard. One hand, it's going to go on there snug. Pull the handle out, push it down, easy. You might have a guy, that's a little stronger than a woman, or a woman that's stronger than a guy. Somebody's going to put it on there a lot harder. So you want to make sure that every person that might deal with this can get it off. One hand, teaching them how to do that makes it a lot easier, saves you guys a lot of headaches and potential phone calls from clients that can't get it off.
One hand also, if you use two, you're more likely to push it down before it's ready and it sprays kombucha in your face or your client's face. Not so much fun for them.
One thing I wanted to mention that I forgot to mention on the keg style, one thing on the Patainer is that this does have the bladder the same as the pub keg, but there are feet on the bottom of this one. So even if you want to take it out of this, it does sit up on its own.
All right, and then real quick, just some benefits and disadvantages to entering the keg world. The benefit is that you can move a lot more volume, which is awesome. It tastes really good on tap, and your tap handle is marketing. So why wouldn't you want to have your tap handle everywhere? And if you are going to make sure your tap handle is also really representative of your brand, and I don't recommend anything little. It just doesn't look good. And also just make sure it's not too wide so that it's hitting the other taps and spilling everything everywhere.
The disadvantages, as you keep growing, you're going to have almost daily troubleshooting with clients because draft systems are still so new to so many people that there's always going to be little quimps. Luckily, most of it's a pretty quick thing. You quick little phone call, and they'll help you work it out. The other thing is, we're here to help you. So if you have any further questions about anything, don't hesitate to ask us.
There's also classes you can take. Micromatic has a class. We do offer some consulting.
And then some colleges offer draft systems classes as well. So
Absolutely.
Look at your local colleges.
So basically, there's 101 opinions about every style of keg, what's good, what's bad. Remember, that was just our opinions. So totally our opinion. And now that we've gone over all the basics, you guys probably have 101 questions. So does anyone have any questions?
Yes, Mike. What do you think about force combination in the keg compared to letting fermentate in the keg? Have you had any experience in doing both methods?
So as far as us, we don't do any kegging of product. We strictly get kegs already kegged. So I can't speak to that, but
Do you have any
Wilbur can,
experience?
or certainly you.
Sort of speak to it. We haven't actually done any of
Give
the
us a 5-minute warning.
fermentation kegs, so I can't speak to that. I can say that when we're force carbonating in the kegs with the corny kegs, like I mentioned, it's nice to put them on their sides actually because it takes that surface area. It basically it increases the surface area, so you have more surface area for that CO2 to absorb. So that's all I can really suggest there. Thank you.
Perfect. Any other questions? Yes.
Can you force carbonate in the keg, in the second keg? Or do they have to be carbonated in a bright keg?
This on? Yeah. Yeah, I don't see why not. You'd be able to, but it is a little more difficult since you can't see that headspace in there. You don't really know how full it is when you're filling them up. So you need to have some headspace in there for that surface area so that you can absorb the CO2 into it. Otherwise, if it's completely full, you can push some CO2 in, but it's going to be, I guess, absorbing through the small downstem, and it probably would take a lot longer. So.
So we use the container kegs and we do carbonate them with couplers. Do you recommend hooking up to a liquid line, gas line?
The carbonation?
Yeah, some people said the liquid line dissolves more because it bubbles up.
That's tough. I would say if it's full, yeah, that makes sense actually, but I haven't really had much experience. And the other side of it, I would say, yeah, I imagine that would be the best way to do it. Haven't done it though. Yeah.
Health Aid uses Patainer. They could be a good resource for you. Yes.
I understand why Kombucha on Tap likes the one-way kegs. It makes kind of sense from the distributor perspective. But as someone of a purist, it really hurts me to think about kombucha sitting for months, weeks or months in a plastic pen. We never ferment plastic. And I'm sure if you did mass spectroscopy on a keg that sat with kombucha in it for 6 months, you're going to see something like a new BHA come out, BPA come out. But I'm a purist. But it seems to me staying with high-quality steel is better.
Done, and there's nothing wrong with that. I mean, that's why we want to say that, whatever works for you guys, stick with it. We're just here to give you some different options that are available that can make expansion easier. But just like we mentioned, there's that company MicroStar that offers stainless steel keg management for you, so you can still get that stainless steel quality that you want. You do have to clean their kegs, but it allows you to have some of that management.
And then in terms of forced carbonation, when you think of microbial fermentation carbonation, you get a better beef quality. It's much harder to control, but I do believe it's a better dissolve, just like champagne has a much better beef quality than Coca-Cola.
Definitely.
Kind of those perspectives.
I will say that when the one-ways became more and more popular, none of our clients, and a lot of them are organic eateries and very, very into the environment, and we have not heard a single pushback on it.
I actually have the opposite concern with the antibacterial properties of stainless steel. Is that going to compromise the shelf life because it's going to kill the good bacteria?
I can't report on that.
I'll just speak to there
Yeah, I
are
was gonna
real probiotic bacteria besides lactic acid bacteria in kombucha. And with bile and pH2 in the stomach, they become prebiotics, which is all good for you. So in terms of bacteria post-fermentation, I don't think it's a big deal. I think the yeast is still there.
I believe he's a microbiologist, so he'd be able to show you on the
We'll refer to the front row on that one.
Yes.
Is there any kind of equipment that you like and don't like faucets that you like perlick, or anything you say, don't stay away from these? I know they're formulated, but those stay away from these because maybe it causes too much foam and you have a lot of issues with clients.
Sure. Yeah, I can definitely. Do we still have time for? Is the Q&A good? Like 1 minute. Okay. So I have transferred over to Perlick faucets now that the newer style Perlick faucets actually seal properly. So they're a big benefit. You don't have as much SCOBY buildup, where a standard faucet has the moving internal shaft. So that has a lot of room for buildup to be on it, so it requires more cleaning. But the Perlix, everything flows much better. You have the forward closing on it, so there's not as much debris that can build up on it. And then as far as the regulator side of things, which was the regulator?
Well, there's the cheaper one that we've replaced a ton of them on. Okay, never mind.
So on the faucet side of things, we have done some on, we've actually poured kombucha on stout faucets as well. It gives it that creamy head, a different style. You'd go at a lower pressure than what you would on the coffee side of things. But the Perlix faucets have worked out really well, just because we've started to switch to that. And we actually got that from attending KBI and talking to other brewers as far as what they're using. So that's been a big benefit.
Yeah. So we probably don't have any other time, but you guys can absolutely come up to us throughout the day and ask any questions you have.
And you have a great community here of people that have used all these different things too. So feel free to talk to everyone amongst them.
Online to the forums as well. That's why they're there. Continue the dialogue.
Thank you, everyone.